Obviously, there are many other people who would give you different forms of advice because they have different business backgrounds, but I would not build any business that's not built for Instagram at this point.
I'm Kristen Flowers. I'm a morning radio personality on 96.5 KOIT in San Francisco. I love to talk, but especially when I get to talk to inspiring and dynamic women. So I've made it my mission to learn from them on how we can become more powerful and grow our voice. I also love getting manicures. This is Helly. She's the owner of Lacquer Bar in Berkeley. And not only do they do amazing work, but they're a feminist playground. That's why it's the perfect place for meetings and manicures. Today, I get to speak with Meg Keene. She's the founder and editor-in-chief of the massively successful website, apracticalwedding.com. She's also the author of 2 best-selling books and a writer of feminist essays found all over the web. Is the wedding business sexist? How do you build a company on Instagram? And what's next for Meg? I'm going to get answers to all of these questions. So what brought you to the Bay Area?
So I was in New York first. I spent a lot of time in the Bay Area growing up.
Oh, okay.
And then I was in New York for 9 years, and then I moved, we moved back when my boyfriend, now husband, was going to law school.
Oh, cool. So what did you do in New York?
I majored in theater at NYU, and then in experimental theater at NYU, and then I worked in professional theater administration.
Okay, so explain to people what experimental theater is. I know what it is, but some people might not.
It's like naked 70s, wild,
like screaming for a half an hour, and
totally.
then crying for a half an hour.
I sort of focused on personal, like performance art with like personal monologue, which is funny because I actually feel like it's probably like directly fed into what I do now. So I did theater administration, which basically meant I was like an operations manager.
Oh, okay.
So I had done a lot of nonprofit events for like no money at all, which then ended up by circuitous route when I got to planning my wedding, or our wedding, I sort of had a sense of like, okay, this is how you plan a wedding when you don't have like an endless budget.
Right.
And thus a business was born, sort of indirectly.
Yeah, so when you started doing your wedding, did you fall in love with the whole process of it? And that's why you decided you wanted to do it?
No, I hated it the most. No, wedding planning is the worst. Yeah. And I built a business on that fact. I have always liked weddings. Like, I don't think I would be in this gig if I didn't.
Right.
I hate planning weddings a lot. I really was interested in the format of, I mean, I feel like we've outgrown this now, but I was really interested in the blogging format from very, very early on.
Oh, yeah.
And I started reading what was then like universally called blogs or web journals. I mean, it was back in the day. Every day, probably in 2002, which is super, super early.
Yeah.
And I watched as they turned into monetized businesses, and was really like, had always wanted a creative business, which is why I majored in theater. And here we are, 10 years later.
So you wanted to start a blog. Why did you want to start a wedding blog?
While he has nothing to do with the business generally now, other than giving me advice from time to time, it was actually my husband's idea, so I will give him credit for that, yeah. We were out taking a walk. I was 3 weeks, if that, into being engaged. I was probably a week into wedding planning. And I was crying pretty hard because I was like, I don't know, I found a budget invitation option, and I was like, great, because apparently like we're spending a pile of money, but we're on a budget.
Yeah.
According to like the wedding industry. And it was $4,000. And I was just like, I don't know if we can do this.
Yeah.
And I don't know if we can do this on our budget, and I don't know if we can do this on our values. And so he suggested I start a blog and call it A Practical Wedding.
So do you notice a difference between like the blog that you started at the beginning and the blog you have now?
I mean, it's a totally different. First of all, I don't even know if it makes any sense to call what I have anymore a blog. I did intentionally start it as a business. Like I feel like from the outside, people don't always know that, and I always want to be really clear that it's not like something I stumbled into.
Right.
And I was working at an investment bank still for the first 3 years, and then I got a book deal, and then I quit blessedly quit my job right around the 3-year mark, and I've been working for myself ever since. I always said we were the 5th largest English language wedding publication, because I was like, there's a bigger one in like India.
Yeah.
And then I found the big one in India, and we're bigger than them. So I believe we're like the 5th largest wedding publication in the world.
So when you were growing, when did you get to a point where you were like, okay, I need to market and I want more people to know about this? Did you ever have it hit a plateau with your audience?
Yeah, no, I've never done that.
Really?
Never marketed, no. No, I never have.
Really? So how do people like find you organically?
Weddings is a business that's largely driven by you Googling in a panic because you don't know how to do something,
yeah,
right?
Absolutely.
You know, and it's a combo. We have a very strong point of view. We always have. We have a really specific point of view, and at that point I stepped into a giant gaping hole in the market. And it's been really interesting because in the 10 years that have followed, the wedding industry has started to catch up on a lot of fronts. But you know, we were publishing gay weddings in 2008, which Martha Stewart Weddings hadn't even published their first gay wedding at that point. Like the Knot would not. Yeah. You know, we were talking about feminism in 2008, and like, look at us now, and like a amazing feminist like nail studio, right? But like, feminism was still a bad word on the internet, and like culturally in a lot of ways in 2008. Like, I lived through and worked through the period where feminism became cool. Like, I remember writing about it and being like, so this is nice and strange.
And that's what's so interesting, I think, about you. It's like, okay, you're this like founder of this like really popular wedding blog, but you're also like a strong feminist. So how do you find a balance between the two? Sometimes you might deal with some sexism when it comes to the wedding industry.
I mean, the wedding industry is nothing but sexism. Oh, I mean, so it's interesting. There are times where I feel like, you know, it's easy to do well in weddings because the bar is so low. The bar is like on the ground. Lack of diversity is so bad. Like, sexism is so bad. You know, it is so egregiously bad that if you are doing, like, if you're really doing a decent job and trying, I feel like you get more credit than you probably should, right? You're like, no, actually, I'm just doing like the basics.
You're a pioneer.
Right, and you're like, I'm not a pioneer, right? This is just, please, guys.
Somebody wants to open a nail salon. Right. And they have the space, they have the people, they have the workers, but they just don't know how anyone's gonna find them. What would be your first recommendation? Instagram, yeah, because it's a visual art.
Obviously, there are many other people who would give you different forms of advice because they have different business backgrounds. But I would not build any business that's not built for Instagram at this point. You know, we are building a new business, and we are like very carefully like, how can we build this for Instagram? It's a little bit sad that that's where we're at right now. But like, if you're building a business that's gonna have like any sort of online basis, like, you have to build it for Instagram.
So for somebody like me I just use Instagram for pictures of my cats and, you know, brunch and things like that. So if I were building a business, what are some of the things on Instagram that you would wanna see, like, that would attract people to you?
Whale pink.
Millennial pink.
Millennial pink.
Okay.
Photos with pink in them are like 68% more. But you need a lot of white. You need a lot of negative space. The problem is it's a very small grid. So you need photos that are really not busy. And greens and browns don't do well. These are all the...
No, these are good. This is really interesting.
My husband is a litigator, and I'm like, do you ever have that problem where you're like, where is the emoji? And he's like, oh, all the time. I'm working on a brief, and I'm like, which emoji does this judge like the best? It's a skill set that allows you to build successful businesses that are able to do good things for women. I try to keep in mind, women-owned businesses historically have a long history of being undervalued and not taken seriously. And the women that have done really well for themselves are the women that understood the worth of what they were building, didn't give it away, and played into the fact that it was undervalued. So the two great examples are Oprah Winfrey and Lucille Ball, and both of them maintained ownership of their production because basically everyone was like, ugh, a talk show on Oprah's case, and in Lucille Ball's case, we're like, ugh, like a comedy for women. And that's how they went on to be wildly successful and have control of their destinies and have control over the content that they created. I am very aware that like, it sounds silly to be like, millennial pink performs better and like negative space and white space performs better, but also those are the tools that get you in front of the audience and allow you to do the work.
Exactly.
And it can be really good work. Women have the buying power. I believe the numbers are like 82% of like purchases are driven by women, even like cars.
Oh yeah, I mean, we in radio, we know that.
Like my husband doesn't to buy a car without my okay.
Right.
And I don't think that's unusual.
No. So tell me what it's like for you working in a female-driven industry.
Yeah, so the awesome thing about weddings is that aside from like the few very big businesses, like the Knot, it's pretty much all female owner operated, and it's a lot of small businesses. I just have the delight of like, when I go to work conferences, I only interact with women. I have taken meetings breastfeeding. I've taken meetings where both members of the meeting, me and the like brand director, were breastfeeding. Whenever I then have to like interact with men rolling up with like all kinds of entitlement,
yeah,
I'm like shocked and horrified because I just, and I worked at an investment bank. Like, I have done my time in the trenches.
You have.
Of like male misery. I had just finished a conference where like 99% of the attendees were women. We were down in Palm Springs. I was checking out, and so we had an entire hotel complex of like 500 people. Everyone was a woman. We were checking out, so new people were checking in, and I was like running a meeting, and I had asked someone behind the desk to print something out for me, and I was just coming back to pick it up, and this guy rolls up. And I was like doing the thing where you're like leaning over the desk, clearly like waiting to like have someone hand you something, right, or like ask a specific question.
Yeah.
And he was like, "Excuse me, you will not be asking your question before I ask mine. You will be backing up."
Oh my gosh.
And he was like, "Because I am checking in and I have been here and I'm entitled to this." And I like turned to him and I was like, "Excuse you."
Yeah.
And then was like, "I'm gonna need that printout."
Yeah.
But I was just, I was like, oh, I don't have to, like, that's not uncommon. Like, let's not kid ourselves, right?
I know.
And he, of course, immediately was making this assumption that, like, I was a woman, I was, like, not in business attire, I was nobody important, right? Like, excuse you, little lady.
Right.
And I was like, excuse me? I'm leading a CEO meeting back here.
Yes.
Like, I'm gonna have to have my print out. But yeah, you have to contend with it sort of on every level. And, my joke is always that if our business was run by a man, like VCs would have been knocking down our door a long time ago. But, we're not.
Yeah.
But on the flip side, I get to, take meetings while nursing and like not have to deal with those guys.
Do things your way. So tell me about your books.
I have 2 books, creatively titled A Practical Wedding and A Practical Wedding Planner. And they've been bestsellers on the wedding shelf for years now.
So what's the new project you're working on?
So we've been sort of wanting for a long time to do a non-wedding project because weddings are great, but they really box you in. Like, we'd been kicking around the idea of what we called internally feminist summer camp for years. It was just like a back burner, like, oh, one day wouldn't it be cool? And this year, right before, I was feeling really burned out right before our 10-year anniversary, and I was just like, I gotta try something new. And we're like, well, we've always kicked around this idea of feminist summer camp. And within a month from being like, why don't we try it? We had a location, a website, and then a sold out in 1 hour launch. And we spent a lot of time trying to figure out like what is the brand that we want to build online and what's missing. And as a woman who's a mother, I feel like there's a lot of stuff that either caters to me as a mom or doesn't cater to me now as a woman in my late 30s. There's just like not a lot for women in their 30s and 40s, and a lot of it is very parenthood focused.
Right.
Like when I'm not with my kids, I probably don't want to be reading articles about parenting unless it's like an emergency.
Right.
I mean, we knew we wanted it to be about real life connection, but we also sort of want it to be about community and conversation. So everyone who signed up for camp when we asked them what they were most excited about, we expected them to be like, oh, archery or, any of the like campy stuff. Yeah. Everybody said campfire. And everybody said talking to people, making new friends, campfire.
Yeah.
And so our idea is sort of like, okay, so how do we build this like virtual campfire? And we get to do archery.
Yeah, exactly. I know, that's so cool. Well, Meg, it's been lovely talking to you. Thank you so much for inspiring all of us.
Thank you.